Hello again, YouTube. My name is Bree, and in today's video, I am showing off all of my miniature bird sketchbooks. So I'll try to go through these quickly because I know that I can talk for ages about sketchbooks and birds, but I'm not going to do that to you today. Also, I just filmed this whole video and then it didn't save, so we're starting again. I'm going to hold it together. So, just to get started, this is the Hahnemuhle 2x2 ZigZag sketchbook. It's an accordion sketchbook. All of these sketchbooks use cellulose paper that are meant for watercolor. And basically, when I was in Scotland back in 2019, I saw this little sketchbook at a shop in St. Andrews and had to have it. And as I saw all the amazing birds Scotland had to offer, I decided that I was going to use this to paint a lot of the birds I saw. So that's what this is. It's a collection of memories. I was already doing a travel journal, but I tried not to include birds there and keep them here instead, just so I could focus on the places in the travel journal itself. So I started off, they don't quite all fit, with a series of corvids because I love corvids and we only have two kinds of crow in my area, so I don't get to see them that often. I was completely in love with all of the different kinds of crow and whatnot. I was very excited when I got to Scotland. So for each one here, I had written down both their name and where I saw them. If it was common, if they were everywhere, I wrote that. The only reason the hooded crow says mole specifically is because it was this specific bird that kept following us around and posing for us, and I just absolutely adored this guy. So going through these quickly, we have a hooded crow, a carrion crow, a rook, magpie, jackdaw, and raven. And after that, I stopped doing the corvids and started to move into the other cute birds I saw. I wanted to get a robin in, but this one, not a very good robin. They were very round though. Tree sparrow. The long-tailed tit was probably the prettiest little bird I saw while I was there. And then a snow bunting. So all of these were painted with Daniel Smith watercolor and a couple others thrown in that were my Etcher miniature palette. It was the same palette I was using for the travel journal itself, so it just added a nice little bit of consistency. On the back, I started to get into birds of prey. We had a kestrel and a sparrowhawk, and then some water birds. And this one I'm going to mispronounce it, but the black guillemot, goosander, oystercatcher, and mute swan. Every once in a while, I think I should do a mute swan when I'm painting local birds, but then I remember I painted it here. And just a little story about that. My hometown is in Central Florida, and some point long in the past, I guess we had a lot of birds and maybe they died. I can't remember the specifics, but a family who had moved here from the UK actually wrote the Queen and explained the situation and asked if she would share some of her royal swans. So they actually did agree and sent over royal swans to our little town in Florida. And they've been living there ever since. They've grown to be such a big protected community to the point where there's too many swans sometimes, and they actually do sell them to other areas just to be part of their beautiful city. We love our swans. There's swan statues everywhere. It's really cool. So, yeah. And then the last two were the pheasant and the gray heron. I think this was the first time I painted a heron, and they've become one of my favorite birds to paint. I'm not sure if they're my favorite birds overall, but I just love how tall and graceful they are. They're just beautiful birds. So we'll just put that up there. And then after I'd finished this sketchbook, I wanted to do another one for local birds. And you could already see that it took a while for me to get going. I don't remember why I wasn't interested in getting started, but I bought the sketchbook, and it wasn't until my first attempt at Inktober failed last year that I decided maybe I should paint a bird every day. I believe my friend Sydney was already doing that, so I basically joined her, though I didn't know that Birdtober was an official thing and there were prompt lists, so I just painted local birds, starting with the most common, with the goal of only doing the 18 birds needed to fill up the sketchbook. So We start with grackles, which are by far the most common birds. The males are all iridescent, but in the case of the females, they're brown. So I wanted to do a male common and a female boattail just to show the difference. All of these are actually on my YouTube channel. All of this sketchbook, I did 3 a day. Well, sorry, 3 a video. I did 6 a week, and I took Fridays off last year. So if you're interested in seeing these, I have my Breeze Bad bird facts. I won't talk too much about the birds specifically here because I've already done that. And I just spent a really long time filming this to realize it didn't record. I keep checking, all paranoid that it's still recording now. So the next 3 were the northern mockingbird, the osprey, and the anhinga. And the last ones on this side were the black vulture, the loggerhead shrike, the great blue heron, and the sandhill crane. So before going any further, I did want to point out that one of the differences between this one and this one was that my goal was to start adding backgrounds. Backgrounds are not something I'm great at. I'm very inconsistent at painting them, if I do at all. And I decided that even if they were simple, and some days they are incredibly simple, I just wanted to have something to represent their home, which is my home. And honestly, I had a lot of fun with that, and I continued that through the rest of my birds, my Birdtober pieces and bird sketchbooks. So I really do like this part of it. And God, I love that great blue heron. So on the back side, we have the little blue heron, the mottled duck, and we have so many of these guys right now. The white ibis, and honestly, the colors in this in the background might be my favorite one in this sketchbook. Then we have the killdeer, which I've not seen recently, and I hope they're okay. A great egret and a fish crow, our local corvid. And then I finished this one off with a brown pelican and a crested caracara. Now, while all of these birds are meant to be those that were really common to my local area, I wanted to mix it up for the last 2. So the brown pelican obviously is more of an ocean bird, and I work closer to the ocean. So when we'd finally gone back to the office, I'd seen a bunch of these, and I decided I wanted to include him, even though I don't see him locally. And then the crested caracara is a winter visitor that had just come back to the area, so obviously I had to include him as well. So making some room. The last 2 sketchbooks were made for me by my friend Spofgh, or Spofgh. Originally, I called her Spofgh because it was a mispronunciation of Sophie. I'm just giving out all your secrets, Spofgh. But generally, I call her Spofgh, so I tend to go back and forth, and I did have a question about that after my last video, I believe. So a little clarification there. Not sure it helps at all. But after I was working in these sketchbooks, she made these super tiny, like much smaller than the original, sketchbooks for me to try. I think she meant for them to just be cute, just because I like little things. But of course, I had to paint in them. They were made using Bockingford Watercolor Paper, which is absolutely wonderful. And I love the little ties on the ends. Even though they're really hard to tie, it's super cute. I love it. So obviously, I had to keep going with Birdtober, even though I had finished my original plan of 18, and I used the one that had the penguins on the cover. So at this point, the first bird I did in here was a Eurasian blue tit, and my goal was to start taking recommendations. So this is Spof's favorite bird, so obviously it had first rights in this sketchbook. I love the deckled edges, but sometimes it's hard to grip them to turn. I mean, the sketchbook, it's so tiny, it's hard to grip anyway, so I apologize as it bounces around on the table. The next one I think was also a request from Spofgh, and that's the tree sparrow. I believe it's a tree sparrow. And then I kind of opened it up to my friends in other Discord communities and Instagram. So I had a request for a gull, and I did this laughing gull. And this is where things start to get interesting, because I had a request for a shoebill, and embarrassingly enough, I had never even heard of this bird. That was a really awkward zoom in, but I want to zoom in a little bit. So this is where I started to actually learn a lot. I mean, I'd learned a lot about my local birds, but now I started to learn about other people's favorite birds and birds I didn't even know existed. So this became a really educational experience for me. And I really like that aspect too. And I love this painting. I'm so glad I gave him a full page so I could really play with the background more. It's one of my favorites. I think this request may have been from Sydney. And then I had a request for a kingfisher. I believe this one's called the Sacred Kingfisher, but I could be mistaken. And then a cassowary, which, if I'm mispronouncing these names, I sincerely apologize. I don't watch a lot of videos. I read about them, and I'm not great about picking up pronunciation from written word, so I'm sorry. But yeah, these birds are very intimidating, but apparently they don't actually attack people as often as they're given a bad rap for on the internet and in the media. And in fact, while they're from Australia, the last one that killed anyone was actually in my area of Florida, because some guy he had a pet, and yeah, probably not the best pet. This is the American woodcock, or timberdoodle. I didn't know about these guys either, but they are adorably egg-shaped and they are super cute. And then we had, I think this is called a little penguin, but they're actually blue in color instead of black. So I picked him for being a little different, but I don't think I did him justice. He was a grumpy looking little dude though. I tend to say he a lot when I'm talking about birds, because most of the time I'm painting the male bird because they're more colorful. But that's just a bad habit. There's a chance that numerous of these birds can be female. So that's my bad, and I should do better. So here we have a tawny frogmouth, and I believe this was the last one I did for Birdtober. I've not been keeping count as I go through here, but this bird has a very absurd face that reminded one of my friends of my cat, or reminded me of my cat after they told me about it. I didn't know about this one either, so quite fond of this little derpy guy. And then I think I took probably an extended break before I finally got back to painting birds again. And I started with the roseate spoonbill because I'd been seeing them more and more in my neighborhood. And they have such unique coloring and an unusual beak shape that had to be included at some point. And then while talking about owls on a Discord server, I realized I'd never painted an owl. So this was my first attempt. Don't remember what one. I think it might just be a barn owl. I'm not exposed to owls very often. I don't see them because they're very sneaky at night, and so I don't really know them that well. And then we were talking about geese, and so combination of people being love or hate Canada Canada geese. I tried so hard to not say Canadian geese that I said goose and gooses. Okay, Canada goose, and I wanted to give him the little marks, because I was thinking about Untitled Goose Game, which I absolutely love, even though that's not a Canada goose. And then this goes back to my friend Sydney again. I will definitely link to her below because I've referenced her numerous times and you should see her work. She takes amazing photos as well as does amazing painting of birds. And she allowed me to paint this willet from her photos, which was just the most precious little sleeping bird. So definitely check her work out. And this was another request of a pied wagtail. Basically, what I'm getting to is that if you want to see me paint a specific bird, I do have blank pages left. I do need a bit of a break, but sometime early next year, I'll probably open up requests both here on YouTube and on Instagram or wherever else I am at the time for additional birds to be painted. This is some sort of nightjar, and I don't recall what kind. I was having a really hard time with him, but there's something charming, I think, about the faded look. They're like little dragons. They're adorable. And then this is a common nightingale. They're the national bird of Ukraine, and I painted this as all of the tensions were rising in Ukraine before it became what it is today, I think. So yeah, if you'd forgotten, that's still going on. It's very, very sad. But I just wanted to focus on just the country, or the flags, the colors within the flag for this bird. I added some sepia, but I just, yeah, I don't have much to say there. Just really sad. And then I believe this was an azure tit and a ruby-throated hummingbird. I don't know why I said mockingbird. Hummingbird, which I really struggled to paint this guy. They're so colorful that it's hard to get that detail, especially at such a small scale. And then I wasn't really sure how to paint the wings, but I think I got a little sense of movement in there. And then this one is a quetzal, and it's another bird I did not know about until my friend Amber painted it. So thank you, Amber, for making me aware of these beautiful birds with their big flowing tail feathers. I don't know which type of quetzal it was, and once again, apologize if I'm butchering its name, but I was a little disappointed in this one because, watercolor, it's hard to hit that specific color sometimes, and these are such vibrant birds. I don't think I really captured it at all, but still, I love the movement of the tail. And here we start Birdtober 2022. So for this year, if you haven't seen my previous videos, I followed the list by Kayla Fisk. So, but I made sure to cater them to birds from my local area, with a couple of exceptions who get slightly outside what can be considered like my city or county. But yeah, I started with a tricolor heron because, of course, I had to paint another heron right off the bat. And then a blue jay. The first few of these, I think the first 7 are actually on my YouTube channel. And then after that, I basically stopped filming them because it was getting to be just too much for me to keep up with. This is a red-bellied woodpecker and a wood stork. Then we have a Florida scrub jay, which are endangered, and I did speak about that in my video, so I'm not going to go into it much here, but we are working, we as in Florida is working to improve their habitats and keep them around, so that's really refreshing to hear. And then this is a Carolina wren. They don't usually get quite this round in my state because it doesn't get quite so cold, but their little round bodies are adorable. And then I think this was the last bird I filmed, and it's the black-necked stilt. And then we move into a little brown thrasher. This guy, I think it's the common yellow throat. This is one of my least favorite ones, and yet apparently this was the one that got the most attention on Instagram, which isn't to say it got much attention at all. It's just by comparison. And then I have a piping plover chick. I think they have the cutest little chicks. They're absolutely adorable. And so when there was the opportunity to paint, the prompt for the day was baby bird. I obviously had to go for it. And then we have a royal tern to finish up this sketchbook. So, wasn't done with Birdtober yet. The next one, the prompt was unique beak, and so I did an American avocet, but I think I emphasized that a little more than normal just because it really wasn't showing in my photo. Yeah. The brown-headed nuthatch, I really like this one. I love the way they hang on the trees. It's just super cute. And then I think this is called a ring-necked duck, but it's been a bit and I'm losing my memory. A cardinal and a swallowtail kite. This one was a very rushed one. I'd gotten really busy at work. There was a lot going on, and so some days were just really hard to get a bird painted. This one I did want to take a second to talk about just because this whole story was depressing. When I looked up, the prompt was extinct, and I wasn't sure what to expect when I looked up extinct birds. I didn't expect necessarily to find one in my local area, but this bird, I think, was actually the last species to go extinct in the United States, or the most recent, I should say. It hopefully could be the last, but I'm not that optimistic. And it's the dusky seaside sparrow, and the last known member of their species died in 1987, so before my time, but I still feel awful about it. Essentially, they lived in 2 areas, really, along the Indian River in Brevard County, and they were hurt by a lot of things, but the 2 main ones is when they were building up Kennedy Space Center back in the 50s and 60s, they flooded the marshes because they wanted to get rid of the mosquito population. Mosquitoes breed in fresh water, and the swarms of mosquitoes were so thick that maybe it should have been a sign to not live here, but we did it anyway. And between the flooding of their habitat and also the use of DDT, which at the time wasn't known to be quite as awful as it was, they basically got wiped out. In the 80s, the 70s, I think they realized there were only maybe 6 left, and they were all male, and they took them to go live in a resort in Disney for birds. where they did try some crossbreeding programs that didn't really work out, and the last one died in 1987. So it's really horribly sad to me that these things have happened in the past, and that we didn't respond quickly enough to rebuilding its habitat to save these birds. They were actively doing it when they realized there were no females left. Luckily, we've learned our lesson, and we're doing better with the birds we currently have in our lives, and other animals as well. It's just horribly, horribly sad. So, yeah, poor guy. And this one is a guy because it was a photo of the last one, so apparently. So I'm feeling a little defensive there for no reason. And then this one, the prompt was parrot. We don't have parrots in my county, but if you travel about 120, 150 miles south of here down to Fort Lauderdale, Miami, you'll start to see them. So this is an orange-winged parrot. They're not horribly common, but there are some parrots there. This guy's looking like a hot dog. He's long. I don't know why I decided to paint this one and this little baby over a 2-page spread, especially with this separation, but I did it, and now it's like more stretched out than ever, so sorry, Longbird. But this is a black skimmer. They use these really unusual shaped beaks to kind of skim the water as they fly over to collect food, so I had to paint one. They're very bizarre to me. And then we have a red-shouldered hawk and a glossy ibis. This is a magnificent frigate bird. I'm not sure I've seen these and same thing for the black skimmers. I haven't seen these locally. I don't spend a lot of time at the water. And then half the time you're looking up at birds and you just see a black object and it's hard to decipher what's what. But this guy has these amazing pink sacs, these bubblegum pink sacs, or red sometimes. So I think I'd recognize him, but maybe not. Once again, pink sac means it's a male. This one I didn't like. I had just gotten off a really, really long, exhausting week at work. Long hours, so I wasn't feeling good about Birdtober at this point. But then I painted this guy the next day and I felt better. So thanks to this little tufted titmouse for helping me along. I really thought he was cute. And then this is a limpkin. Basically, we have one in the neighborhood, and it's perfectly relaxed and chill, but the moment I take out my phone to try to take its picture, it runs. So I have like a bunch of pictures of it where it looks like a cryptid. So I had to include my new local cryptid in this setup, or in this prompt list somehow. And then this was a painted bunting. I've never seen them. They do live around here. The prompt was colorful, and they are known to be one of the most colorful birds in the state. Or the most colorful bird in the state, and one of the more colorful ones in the nation. And when my mom was flipping through the sketchbook, she actually stopped there and she goes, "Oh, I've seen these before," so I'm a little jealous. This one was another weekday one, and it was the common brown dove. Don't really like that one. And then we have a whippoorwill, which I've also not seen. They're nocturnal, they have amazing camouflage, and they don't make a lot of their noises. That helps identify them during the winter when they live in Florida, because they are not inbreeding. So yeah, they're only winter visitors. This guy I want to talk about a little bit more in reference to what I said before about the dusky seaside sparrow. This is the Florida grasshopper sparrow, and they are similarly endangered. They are endangered, they are not extinct. And in 2017, they were down to about 100 numbers, 30 to 40 breeding pairs. And when the state realized that it was that low, the conservation groups really stepped up, and they have been doing an amazing job to restore their habitats. They live in dry prairies, which unfortunately have become a popular area for agricultural usage. So between that and fire suppression techniques that allow their land to get a little overgrown for their purposes because they need that brushy thing. They're very, very tiny birds. They're like 5 inches. They've not been doing well of late. So in 2017, a bunch of different conservation groups got together and started working on breeding programs to help them along. And I found out even after I finished Birdtober that my own zoo, which is like 5 minutes from my house, has been actively involved in that breeding program. And not only do they work on breeding the birds, but apparently sometimes birds will have eggs or lay eggs and then take no interest in raising them, especially if they're first-time parents, and abandon them. So people will find their eggs out in the wild and bring them, and then they're able to pair them up with other birds that have just recently laid eggs so that they can raise them together. And they've been extremely successful, at least at my local zoo, in doing that. And in September of 2022, they released the first 47 new Florida grasshopper sparrows out in the wild. And that was just from my zoo. Each of the different conservation groups have been releasing their own. So it's incredible to think that just 5 years ago, there were only 100 known birds left. And yet each year, individual groups are releasing 40, 50 birds back in the wild. So it's very reassuring after hearing the other stories about the extinct bird. So then it was my birthday, so I wanted to draw a very grumpy heron. These are much stubbier than the other herons I've been painting, and I don't see them as often. They are a not nocturnal bird, but an evening bird. So they tend to come out in the evening and stay into the early night and then go to sleep, I guess. And this is the black-crowned night heron, so they're much stubbier than other herons, and they look very grumpy, though I'm sure they're not. I do apologize about the constant light changes. I didn't expect this cloud coverage. Hopefully the lamp's helping it be a little bit more consistent than I'm thinking. And then we have the vulture prompt. This is a turkey vulture. So we have two vultures in my area, the black vulture, which I had in this sketchbook right here, and the turkey vulture. And I said it back then too, I feel awful for vultures because they get such a terrible rap and people like chase them off. They don't want to see them because they deal with carcasses. It's arguably kind of yucky, and they're not the prettiest birds, but they perform such an important role in our ecosystems that I wanted to give him more of a glowy look. So instead of hard to find lines, I wanted to, give him a full spread and make him look a little glowier and a little respect to this important member of our ecosystem. And then finally, we have another owl for the prompt of nocturnal. I think this is a screech owl, eastern screech owl, but even though it's the last one I did, the most recent bird I painted, I'm drawing a blank. I learned a lot about owls after I looked at their skeletons, after Sydney pointed out to me. They have very normal looking skeletons with long legs and normal bird faces for the most part, but they are just all fluff. I find them quite difficult to draw because, their anatomy isn't showing through at all. So that's it for now. I do have about 10 pages left, 10 more birds that I will be able to do in the future. So at some point I will be taking requests if you want to see some of your favorite birds in my little sketchbooks. But otherwise I will be taking a bit of a break from this birdie chaos to focus on some other things. I talked in prior videos about how I want to start a project soon, and I haven't really gotten to that. I am still working on my painting of my sweet kitty and working on some other little things that will be going out for ATC exchanges and whatnot. So right now I'm just a little overbooked, but hopefully I'll get back to this soon and I'll let you know. And it's raining now, so that's a perfect time to end this and finally go have my coffee. So thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed looking at these little birds as much as I enjoy painting them, and I will see you in a couple weeks with a new video. Take care. Bye.